Hey Latchkey kids and driving mutants. You're listening to KAB 1340 Antonio Bay Radio. I'm Lady Shasha, mistress of the snark, connoisseur of gore, and hostess with the mostest. I just watched the 2021 film Last Night in Soho, starring Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy. Thomasin plays Eloise, who is an aspiring fashion designer who gets the opportunity to go to London to study fashion design. Eloise is a bit of a fish out of water, coming from Cornwall to London. She had a bit of culture shock when meeting the other design students in her dorm, as they are more metropolitan than she. She also learns how cold some city people can be. I thought that was illustrated well with their interactions. I can relate to Eloise. I came from a small town in Connecticut and went away to college in Miami. The students were nicer to me in Miami and really looked out for the girl from the small town. They weren't cold, inconsiderate, or cliquey like the girls Ellie has to deal with in this movie. Anyway, this gives Ellie a reason to leave the dormitory and search for a better situation. She finds a listing for an apartment in Soho. Side note, I just realized that there is a Soho in London, a Soho in New York, a Sono in Connecticut, and a Sodo in Orlando. Since this review is spoiler-free, I will just say that Ellie is mysteriously able to travel to 1960s London, which is shown in the trailer. She's able to interact with a singer named Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. I really like Anya Taylor-Joy's face. She reminds me of Zoe Lund, who starred in Miss 45. That said, Thomasin McKenzie really shines in this movie. I thought that I was not familiar with her before this movie, but actually, I just didn't recognize her as the same actress that was recently in M. Night Shyamalan's Old. This movie is a very compelling mystery thriller. When thinking about the plot, the phrase, "all that glitters isn't gold," comes to mind, because Ellie has a very idealized view about what the 60s were like, and she views Sandy's life as glamorous at first, until she gets a closer look. She sees that what is going on behind the scenes isn't glamorous at all. That's when this movie takes a tonal shift into psychological thriller, or I should say that it adds on to its mystery thriller aspects by also including psychological thriller elements. This movie is also categorized as horror, so I became a bit anxious as I anticipated what that horror might be. This movie does get creepy, but before I get into that, I want to mention someone else who really shines is Michael Ajao, who you might know from Attack the Block. He plays John, a very sweet and kind student who is in Eloise's class. I really loved his character, and his acting made that character work so well. I noticed that when he ordered a drink, it was called the Cronenberg. I'm guessing that that's a shout out to director David Cronenberg. This definitely has a Cronenberg feel to it, especially as the tension ratchets up. I became increasingly worried for Ellie and anyone close to her. This is tense, suspenseful, and entertaining. There are some nice twists and turns. You may think you've solved the mystery based on the clues presented before you, but then what you think you saw is completely recontextualized. I really loved the twist. I totally didn't see it coming. I really thought that I had the story pegged as one way, and it was something completely different. The ending is not only masterfully done, it is brilliantly shot. I will say that there is one scene that would have had one hell of an impactful jump scare if it hadn't been spoiled in the trailer. So if you haven't seen the trailer for this, do yourself a favor and do not watch the trailer. Go in blind, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy this. Did I mention how great this movie looks? You know I love color. Shout out to the original Suspiria, and Poltergeist, and Creepshow, and Return of the Living Dead. Horror doesn't have to be dreary or sepia-toned. I recently read that the director of this, Edgar Wright, is very influenced by Dario Argento's Suspiria. I also saw shades of the movie Repulsion, which was shot in London in the 1960s. Edgar Wright is best known for Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but I really liked the trailer he did for Don't, that was part of Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse double feature. I hope he still gets to make that into a full-length feature. I highly recommend this film if you like David Cronenberg films, David Lynch films, and as a wild card, I'm going to also say Bill Condon, who directed a mystery thriller called Sister Sister. It starred Eric Stoltz and it was released in 1987. If psychological mystery thrillers with a bit of horror thrown in are your thing, definitely check this out. At the time of this recording, Last Night in Soho was available to rent on Amazon Prime Video. But like I always say, don't take my word for it, watch it for yourself. Just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it, and just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. Have you seen Last Night in Soho? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, this has been Lady Shasha for KAB 1340 Antonio Bay Radio, signing off.